Okay, repair of folding wing mirror on a Jeep Cherokee, Jeep Liberty or Jeep Grand Cherokee. It's off the vehicle now. I've not found a pretty way of doing this. This side has sort of like a lip and this side has the catch, but it's always been a struggle every time I've done one of these, so bear with me. Okay, start again. Battery went flat. Repair and service of a folding mirror off a Jeep Cherokee, Jeep Grand Cherokee, Jeep Liberty. I think that's all. Put that one side, that one side. This is the one off the driver's door. Notice that there's just a slide and a catch on there. The slide goes that way in. Not found a pretty way of doing it, but I put my screwdriver in there, just pop it out. Next thing is to take the mirror off. I'm again not sure whether there's a right way or wrong way of doing it, but I literally just get hold of it and just give it a pull, and catches come off all over the place. So, and then there's two wires. Hold that in for the heated part, that comes off. Okay. And then after that you will notice that there's three wires going to this. On another version there's a square plug which doesn't need to be taken apart because that comes out through the whole thing, but basically what you've got to do is you've got to take that off, and when it comes out it looks like that. You lift the tab, stick a wire in and pull each individual wire out. Make sure you remember which way the wires go round in the camera. Alright. Okay. Got the wires out eventually, so pointless you showing me struggling on that. Next thing is these three screws come off. It's a torque screw. Don't know the size, but I'm sure you'll find it. That one. Also not a pretty action. You've then got to obviously rescue each one of these. Didn't matter which way around these black wires go, because these are just for the heated mirror. So once you've done that and you pull that through, that's them all out there. With those three screws out, this with a bit of a wobble comes out. Now, one I remember, there is a bigger square in here. There's two little ones and a bigger square which locate onto these bits here. This black bit is the bit that turns when the motor turns. Okay, so that's that off. Very easy, he says. The next bit is as pretty as you can. Not that pretty well shot. So we'll take that off and take that from there. It will go back on. Shove that over there. Now on this, holding this bit in, because there's three screws in the bottom of this unit. 4 screws, he says confidently, 4 screws which go in the bottom of there. So to get this off there, there's a clip here and a clip there and a heated clip where they've melted it in there. Quite often it's a bit of a struggle. I find it's easier to undo, to put something on here, spring the clips coming off there and then wiggle about, and it eventually pops off there. Again, I'm not going to show you me struggling with it. Now unfortunately sometimes because of the way these have been heated and bent across, I've just broken that one, but I'm sure a little bit of glue on the final assembly is going to solve that problem. Back to this, we now have 4 torque screws in the bottom of this which hold this motor in, when he gets the right way around, in there like that. Again, this is located by this thing here. It can only go in one position. Again, I'm going to undo the 4 torque screws, but I'm not going to show you that either. Don't like to see me struggle. Right, struggled enough, but that clip will come out from there, he says confidently. That way round, sideways. Okay, and then again you've got to negotiate that rubber through the hole. If you keep, because I don't bother moving that rubber, it just that's where it goes into the thing through the door. I'm going to stop it again because right. Okay, that comes out of there, so we can discard that with that over there. While I remember, if you do buy new one of those, the top, he says, not got one handy. I haven't got one handy. Oh, there it is. The top comes with self-tapping screws. Now on the one that I've resurfaced there, I re-tapped with the original size screws, but you could just use the self-tapping screws if you wanted to. And one other thing while I remember, if you are replacing these, that should not be as tight as it is. This is the bit that turns when the motor runs, so when you put it all together and it's spring loaded, it jams up. If you're a clever bugger, you can file that away so it's a nice smooth fit. What I did is I just chamfered the edges slightly around there, very lightly, so it doesn't matter how hard you push it together, it would turn. As you can see, that's quite tight. Okay, back to this one. So we're about to see how dirty and black it is inside. This is a slightly smaller torque screw, so I'll change that. And again, it's 4 little screws, all go into here. Now it might be worth at this stage remembering that hopefully your wing mirrors are in the out position. You know that is a key position, it can't be changed in here, it can only go in one position. It can actually go in, oh yes, it can only go in one position, which is there. So it might be worth making a note of where this is in relation to that. So it's actually, someone said it before, they've marked the yellow bit there, the larger one, and that there. So when it's in the open position and when you reassemble in the open position, you know that that is to the right of it. Okay, as long as it's to the right and within the slots, I'll show you later. In here, these there's some metal bits that go into the keyway there, but I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, next bit. Carry on regardless. Oh, I can't, no, I thought I couldn't count up to 4 there. When this all comes apart, okay, this then comes out from there. Okay, you've then got, which you can't buy, you've then got this and the spring loaded thing. That's sort of like if you push the wing mirror, it's supposed to be, it's clips again. Obviously that's circular, so it can go anywhere, but again this has a square keyway in it, and there's a square keyway on that as well. So as long as you get those so it will slide up and down, no problem at all. And the bit I was mentioning before is you've got the 2 nodules in there and these, so that is your spring loaded part. Okay, and then you carry on, pull this bit off. Now quite often the gears are all in here, but you've also got a ring gear, a spring, and again something else that allows everything to move. If this is okay and not split, one of the ones I took off originally was split, so when it tried to move it jammed up. Can't remember which one it is now. So if it doesn't look too damaged, I would just clean it up and keep it in one place, because this is very good spring. And if you take this clip out, it goes ping. What I made was something like that, and I had to file that washer down slightly so it went within the ring, so I could actually compress it all, take the ring out and take it apart. But again, this can only go in one position, or any position I should say. It does have keyways, but the whole thing would turn anyway. So I'm just going to clean it up and grease that up when it's done. This is the part that's important. Now, on the passenger side, I believe the yellow goes on that side and the blue on that side. You've got to remember that, because if you get those the wrong way around, obviously when one wing mirror opens, the other one will close. And that's where we're at. Now it looks like someone's been into this one before. Oh, and these come out just by pulling out of the motor. So this is as new to me as it is to you. When I pull this out, he says confidently, right, yeah, someone's had a go at this, but I don't know what they've done. But quite often the worm gears are the ones that fail, and quite often the one on the motor, this is one I broke earlier, when this comes off, it's almost disappeared on the ones that don't work. Now I tried pushing the bit you get with the kit on in one fell swoop. I filed the other one off, the old one off, and I thought I can just push that straight on. It can't. It has to be filed down a little bit more, and then I put something over the top and just slowly wind it in a vise, and it went that way. If you buy a motor, when you find your motor's not working, the other problem with the motors that you buy is this one is a new one. You will find that there's a big gap here and that. Now that will end up being too long. This goes into the top, similar to that one. If you put a new motor in there, it doesn't go onto the stops. Now what I found is put a little nut on there, again, squeeze it in a vise, push it down so it's nearly touching the edge of the motor, and then I literally ground down that point, so when it was sitting in the hole in there, that went down to the bottom, and that was a good fit. This is one I prepared earlier. You'll notice it's now lower down and filed off there, and that now fits perfectly into there. Okay, so the next job is to wash and clean, basically. Well, chuck those and they basically just come out. Find something else to play with. We'll use that. That just pops out from there and slides up and out, he says confidently, normally. Bingo. Okay, so again they're the old bits. This pack of new bits, and as I say, you get this with it when the worm gear on the other one goes. It doesn't fit directly onto the shaft, doesn't matter what you do. I haven't tried heating up red hot and pushing it on that way. I'm not that clever, so all I did was I just got a file and sanded the shaft, filed the shaft down as evenly as I could and shoved that on, and it did work. But on another one I tried, as you see, didn't try it, and I bent the shaft, so that is a dead man. Okay, so I'm going to turn off, clean everything up, and then we'll go for the reassembly. Thank you very much. Okay, everything cleaned up. Now I'm just using it in standard LM grease. I don't know whether I'm supposed to use that or not. I haven't looked it up, to be quite honest, but I'm going to use it anyway. And all I'm doing is I just, once that's clean, I just pull the teeth up, a little bit around the spring on the inside. Don't need too much. Okay, that's that. Next bit. Gears go back into place. long one, dead easy, goes into there. Oh, other way around, if I do it properly. Big gear into there, and that slides down into there. Okay, then this one that comes in the kit has a big end and a small end. Obviously we'll only mesh one way anyway, so there you go. That goes like that, and then to be quite honest, all I did was fill up where the gears are. Again, whether that is the right way of doing it or the wrong way of doing it, I have no idea. It's just what I'm doing. Okay, so this motor, I should have put it in before. Don't forget that goes in that way around, and you'll notice that this sleeve, it more or less goes up against the stop inside the casing there when we're done. But what we've got to then now do is negotiate the bit where the wires go so that it comes out to there. I may turn this off so it doesn't look like I'm struggling. So I've greased everything up there, that's greased. What I normally do now, and I'll do this off camera, is it's the yellow and the blue wire that power this motor. I'll put the wires back in, and then first thing I do is obviously check that gear spins. Then the next thing I do is I do an assembly, and then I'll do it at that stage. I'll show you. I'll show you how I do it. As I say, I'll just put 2 wires into there and then make it go in both directions to check it works. Okay, so here we go. Okay, back on there, and slid that over. Now don't forget, on this one, that larger square was to the front of comes out the door like that, so it was like to the front and inside towards the door. That would match up because we mentioned earlier that that yellow spot was in that direction. There was another yellow spot which is somewhere down there. So again, all I'm doing there is feeding those through there and matching this bit up. That goes in front of there. But before we do that, let's see, that goes on like that. But before we do that, that goes over there, and again remember this goes down over away from this because it locates into those modules in there. And again there's a square part on this which is here, so that square there has to match in with that over there. He says constantly finding it. And that goes like that. Now I'm going to put some grease on this because it probably needs it. You can decide how you want to lube it yourself. As I say, I have no idea. I haven't read anything to say this is the right way of doing it or the wrong way of doing it. I'm just doing it because to me that seems the right thing to do. So anyway, back to this again. Again, that bit locates above the gear that you've put in there. That goes over the top, and they all just go together. So it's confidently. Now that's spring loaded. You know it's in about the right place. Now find the screws, and it was those ones. Okay. That goes in there because this is a smaller screw. What I do is try and do them evenly, get it started, and then do your opposites, and then in theory you know that it's going to locate. There we go. Okay. And just wind it down enough just to get it started, and then the others go in. As I say, I've used the same stuff apart from the gears on this. if you do use the other ones, while I remember, I mentioned this earlier about it needing chamfered to go into this top here, but there's also another, see how tight that is, that shouldn't be that tight. There's also the other problem is this rotates into that bit, and you see that is tight. So what I did was there, I just took a file inside that so that would then turn freely, because obviously if it's tight there, then the motor's fighting against it, and that is just too tight. Yeah, see, it's definitely where they've cast it, that's too tight. So just you can actually feel a bit of a ridge there. Just file that off so that spins freely in there while I remember that. So as I say, I've got the nearly 4 screws, can't count, there we go, got the 4 screws in, and then all I'm doing is opposites. Now I'm a bit of a bodger, so all I've got is a wire out of screenshot here, a battery I should say out of screenshot, and all I'm going to do is, once I've got these tightened up, shove 2 wires into here, and then the 2 leads off the battery I'm going to put one way and the other way, just to double check that it moves in both directions quite well. Okay, so I'll turn that off and I'll go away and check it. You'll see that after I've run it in and out, that has actually matched up exactly with that yellow mark that someone has put on before. Don't know who's put it on, but mine ran freely, and that's all I did with that. Just put 2 wires in, then literally touch the 2 wires, and it goes all the way one direction, all the way the other. That's basically it, apart from reassemble. So again, I shall cut it off while I feed this through and make it come out of there, and I'll show you very quickly in 2 more stages, I think. Okay, right, I've fed the wire through, comes out there as I said before. Don't forget that this bit locates into one bit there, so again it can only really go in one position. Make sure it's all the way down, then back up to the bigger torque screw, because we're nearly done. And again, it's these screws. Now these are the ones that if you're using, I bought one of these with the head, because that's the head that goes in the bottom there. These are not tapped, do not come tapped. They are supplied with those self-tapping screws. When I did this one, I tapped them back out again, so that one's ready to use if ever I need it. But anyway, these basically go into there. But if you have used the new part, then it will be the self-tapping screws that you put into this bit here. Right, turn it off for the next bit. Okay, so that's back in there, that's done. These are all done here. The next bit is reconnecting onto here. Now I'm going to see whether this clip's okay or not before I use any glue. But again, this can only go back in one position. Once you get it in about the right place, it's just a question of squishing it back together. He says confidently. I'm going to turn it off while I struggle. Just needed persuading, and that broken bit isn't going to affect how bad it is anyway, because to be quite honest, this is just a fascia and the screws are still holding the main part on anyway. So that's that part done. It's now a question of feeding these wires back up through there, and one easy. forget, this will only go into one place. It will locate onto that, onto the larger, well, 3 keyways. But obviously it's got to be in exactly the right place. Then it's a question of just using the 3 screws I've got. There we go. Those 3 screws go into there. Then you feed these wires through, put your clip back on the way you photographed it, attach the 2 black wires to the mirror, clip the mirror back in place, and then reassemble. I hope that helps it all, and I hope my camera worked.